Speaking of hamburgers, and what's commonly used, there are variations, and some will be more common hamburger, and they all kind of have a funny name. So, donair in a pyramid style,
This
probably
is so
less used.
awesome.
Bento, um, this one I see probably this. I think this one maybe not as common, but I have for sure seen it. Bento, so we have a little 3 by 3 grid pattern, kebab, stacked meatballs in a horizontal line instead. There are all used. Again, what's most commonly used? I would say this one. Um, I think I see things like these two if we need to get into more detail. So again, if you have a giant site and we need multiple forms of navigation, they might integrate that in there as an additional way to navigate through potentially, or some form of filtration might be within there. But again, these would be the most common. So maybe it's up for you to give it a go. And in the land of UX, we don't get anywhere without user testing. So that just means when we pop that in there and we test, if people don't find it intuitive, if we did decide to do this, then it might just mean we have to go back. Again, it always depends on who our users are and what they're going to feel works best for them. So when we do finally click that navigation, there are ways that that can open up. So that expanded navigation, when we do click that, that can slide down from the top. It can slide in from the sides. We do want to ensure that it is intuitive. So if we are clicking the top left in that navigation, we don't want the navigation then slide in from the right. It'd be weird. So if we hit the top left for it, we want to slide in from the left, and same vice versa, or slide in from the right. What this I feel is missing would be a way to close that. Again, intuitively, we often will just click that navigation again to close, but it is nice to have an additional X to close that navigation out when it is open. One of the ways that, again, you would integrate this into your development would be that however you open it is the same way you close it. So this could essentially turn into the X, or again, if you don't have an X, then this way, if you re-click that, that would close that navigation up. Another way, I don't believe I have it in here. Oh, I do have it in here. One of the things I do talk about is, on this page too, is being mindful of spacing. Again, that comes in time. People either want to have that typeface really large or that typeface really small, and they want to have everything squashed in together. If you think about your fingers and your thumbs trying to click that navigation, particularly on mobile, if I'm trying to hit something that's too close together, what's going to happen? I'm going to end up hitting like two buttons at the same time. So we want to make sure that when we are spacing them out, that there is enough space for your users to be able to hit the right button and not get annoyed. Has anybody been on a site where you're clicking, you're like, I can't click the button I want because it's too damn close together? It's annoying as hell. And I don't think I have very large hands. If you think about someone that has like big old ham hands, that's going to be like incredibly so as I mentioned, always have a way to close the menu. This displays this a little bit better, especially if you have a full screen. So sometimes your navigation will open up full screen. We'll call it, that's a big takeover. So again, we very much need to make sure that there's an X 100% on that one, maybe a little bit less on the other one. Personally, for me, I argue that it's nice to have that X in there just in case someone's not super intuitive by clicking the navigation again to close. Again, you can see on this one, this opens up and it does say a closed menu. From a development point of view, you can do it a few ways. I don't personally like this, and I don't think it's maybe the best way that when that navigation opens, the whole site will slide over with it. Don't like it. It should just kind of go over. But but what I do like in particular that's displayed here is that when the navigation opens, because it doesn't take over the whole page, they do gray out what's happening in the background. So this way your users are able to focus on what they should. So there's now building contrast to between those. So there's some contrast between your now navigation and your background. So your user is not confused on or getting distracted by whatever is happening in the background. So always keeping that in mind as well. Working on a grid. Did you guys work on grids when you were in Visual Web? Or work with grids by chance? Yeah. Did anybody love it, hate it? Shannon, doesn't surprise me. You gave
In
me a
what
thumbs up
class
on
did
it.
we do grids?
Visual
design?
Web, or even actually any layout class too. You will be hammered. I mean, if
Yeah,
it has,
layout, yes. And they have a grid on, I was recommended to use the grid on Figma. It
yep,
just makes everything so easy.
yes. It doesn't just make it easy for you as the person building. It very much makes it a much cleaner design. I will say it does take getting used to. As someone that didn't learn anything about grids, they probably didn't exist when I was in college, university, besides if you were working for a newspaper, or it's something that they definitely didn't hammer at that time. Always use a grid, and that's in any form of design. I'm crazy with the grid, so I always want to make sure you can see the grid in this presentation. Here is my grid. This is 2 columns here, and this is several columns here. It's a sense of predictability for your users, but it also keeps things very nice and organized. In particular, in a digital platform, a grid is imperative for responsive design as well. And we'll talk about that. So a grid in web design is the division of the layout with either horizontal or vertical lines, more so from a sense of vertical, horizontal, yes, but from a responsive point of view, focusing more on vertical. It's that basic structure, the skeleton, the foundation, the framework of your site. So that is including your margins, your columns, and your gutters. Hopefully all of those things are recognizable words for you folks. So we have our margin. So that's the buffer that we have on the left and right. In web, in digital platforms, and in print, we never want things to go all the way to the edge of the page. Unless it's an image or a color wash, anything like that, that's fine to bleed off of the edge, but anything that essentially is imperative information, so thinking things like text, or buttons, we don't want to have close to the edge. We never want to have someone trying to like push something that's like way over on the edge of their screen. It's going to frustrate the heck out of them. Then we have our columns. So it's up to you to decide what you want your columns to be on your site. Again, one of the most convenient grids. This is incorrect for mobile. That's way too much. Mobile is about 6. 12 probably maybe on a desktop. And then your gutter is the spacing between them. So think if we have a button that takes up 2 columns here, and then a button that takes up another 2 columns, we want to make sure that there's enough breathing room between the 2 of them so they don't sit too close together. So a minimum for, say, Android would be 16 pixels. I think that's okay, but you could, of course, be bigger. Shouldn't be less than that. Again, not only from a functionality point of view, which is what we should most of all be thinking about, but also visual. It looks really kind of yucky when things are like too close to the edge. So it can be bigger, but again, not too big. So it's a fine line. They shouldn't be too large, but 8 pixel, that's tricky. In Figma, they will auto generate that buffer. So we can look at that when we get back into Figma of how to set up that column and that grid. Because depending on what you set your margins and depending how many columns you set up, it'll auto adjust the gutter to go between them. And you can force it to do something different. And then of course it has to auto adjust, but it's pretty intuitive from a sense of what is best. Onboarding. Does anybody know what onboarding is? Logan, give it to me.
Oh, it's like a sign up screen or like a join screen type thing. Like
Yep,
it's like the first kind of like landing page that you end up on when you go to a website.
totally. 100%. Onboarding mostly, yeah, websites potentially, especially if there's something that like you need to learn how or you need to know how to do something. Onboarding you'll typically see in an app. So say you download a new game or an app and it's going to tell you, you know, like sign up for discounts and click this button to set up your profile and you'll click this button. So it'll almost be, it could be a sign up. It can also essentially be almost like a little tutorial of how to use the platform that you've just downloaded. It can also be in games. So if you think about either mobile app games or a game, you know, video game system, it could be anything that gives some sort of welcome or some sort of tutorial that's engaging for your users is good to put on there. Again, when we land on a website and it says sign up today and a pop-up comes in, a little bit less onboarding, more so if you land on that site and maybe they need to walk you through how to do something. So again, it could be as simple as like how easy it is to sign up. And there are a few things involved in onboarding. So when we do have the features of onboarding, we always want to show them the progress. So we don't want to exceed too many pages on the onboarding. We don't want to have a 10-page onboard. We want to make sure it's a little bit quicker. So maybe 4 or 5 maximum. For the most part, maybe 3 or 4. They're usually really visually appealing, so they include illustrations, photos, etc. They also include a clear way for users to get to the next screen. So if you say are like, okay, I don't want to like, I don't want to learn or I don't want to go through all of this. I just want to get to that sign up. There's a way to say skip. There's a way to move forward. So you'd probably be able to swipe when it comes to mobile, but it's always nice to put an arrow as well. And always a way to go back. So if you say go forward maybe prematurely and you're like, oh, did that say? Do I need to do this? You'll always be able to go back. So a back button, a skip button, a next and forward button, and a progress. Those are all the interactive features that should be there. But then from a visual point of view, usually some sort of visually appealing illustration or photo, and then also a bit of supportive copy. So whatever they're asking you to do, or whatever you're explaining to your user will also be there as well.